Do you ever wish you could get rid of clutter and live a simpler life? I'm sure if you've ever moved house, you will have wished you hadn't kept quite so much stuff. Today I've been thinking about that and some of the things that make things simpler for us, and some of the things that make life so much better. And sometimes those things are how we live and treat others, how we think and act rather than what we have. Sometimes those are the things that make us more attractive, kind and caring. Hello, my name is Ian Currey and this is Thinking Out Loud. Come on, let me tell you what I think. Usually when I travel, I take food with me so that I can eat things I should be eating. You know, the healthy things that are good for me. Oh, and the ones that don't cost a fortune. But sometimes, especially on longer trips, I need to buy myself lunch. And very often that decision about what to eat is decided simply by the length of line at the food counter. Lines have really been getting long in some airports, either because of increased passenger numbers or perhaps construction and modernization, or maybe it's just because shops and restaurants are not being open quite so often. It could be a combination of all of those things, I suppose. Anyway, recently I decided, well, yes, by the length of the queue, that Chinese food was going to be for lunch that day. I really didn't have very much time before my next flight and was already wondering if I actually had time to eat the food, even if the line of people in front of me moved quickly enough for me to buy something. I was just doing that mental math, working out how many people were going by and how many people were going to get served in the next 10 minutes, that sort of thing, when a man stepped in front of me and said, "Excuse me, I just need to take care of this. I hope you don't mind, but I have a very tight connection." I was a little taken aback. Now, my immediate reaction, fortunately, didn't get from my head to my mouth. I smiled but said nothing. What would you have done? In front of the man that had just pushed in front of me was a woman with a pushchair and several small children, and clearly struggling to keep everything together. Once we got to the counter, the man said a few words to the woman. I think he was saying, "I have a tight connection." And then he ordered food. How rude. Oh, now I'm building a mental picture. I'm deciding what I'd like to say to the inconsiderate man and thinking of things I wish I could have said. The indignant part of my brain is thinking things too. Things like, "I bet he doesn't have as tight a connection as I do." And I wonder if he has any manners at all. Now, unfortunately for me, I was wearing an airline uniform, and if I had run my mouth, I'm sure I would have made it into another sort of YouTube video. And while really wanting to say something, I counted the cost and decided I could live with another rude man briefly, and in a few minutes I would never see him again, and I could go on about my day and my life and just enjoy being nice to people. I realized that I was not only just Ian in a line for food, but was also representing the airline whose uniform I was wearing. One of the things that is key to the airline I work for is something called servant leadership. I'm quite sure others were watching and would have been very interested if I'd said anything at all. What would you be thinking right about this time? I'm sure you know me well enough by now to know that I wouldn't be telling you this story if there weren't a lesson to learn. And I was about to be taught a very big lesson. The food was bagged up, and there seemed to be quite a lot of it, and then the man paid. But instead of leaving and going on to find his very tight connection, he handed the food to the woman, bowed, and left. And as he walked past me, he said, "Thanks for letting me do that," and he walked off into the airport. "What can I get you?" "Sir, what can I get you?" It was now my turn to order, but I wasn't hungry anymore. Can you see how badly wrong I'd been in my assessment of the rude man? Well, in my defense, he could have explained a little better what he was up to, and I'd have enjoyed watching his kindness. When I eventually got my food and got to the flight, I sat in my jump seat ready to take off, and there in front of me, grinning from ear to ear, was the same man. His tight connection was indeed tight. It was the very flight I was working. Eventually, I did muster up enough courage to tell the man I really liked what he had done and thanked him for doing it. His response just made things worse for me. Do you know what he said? "Oh, I just like doing things to others that I would like them to do to me." Of course he did. He was, of course, just quoting the well-known golden rule, and we can find that in several places in the Bible. And one of those places is there in Luke chapter 6. "Do to others as you would like them to do to you." But there are a lot of other verses right around this one that will add a bite to that idea. I'm not going to read them all. You can do that later. I'm sure you can. But here's part of just one of those ideas. "And if you do good only to those who do good to you, why should you get credit? Even sinners do that much." Have you ever felt the way I did when someone pushed in front of you and it's a very long line? Can you think of a situation that might not have been all it appeared to be? This week, I've tried to show how sometimes when we get stuck in our ways with all the clutter of everyday life, we can miss what God has put right under our noses. And I should have noticed. Why do you think I didn't see the woman struggling with her children? And why didn't I at least try to help her? I did notice, but only after the man pushed in. Perhaps I couldn't afford to buy the lady and her family lunch, but me wanting to eat my lunch, me being selfish and thinking only about me first, somehow got in the way of me seeing a very generous man helping out a stranger. Just as I was representing the airline I work for because of my uniform, and so didn't act badly to a situation I clearly hadn't understood, I wonder how often we actively think about the things we do and say, representing the beliefs we say we have and follow. That's a tough one, isn't it? As my friend Miss Evans from long ago would say, "Before you try to give someone a piece of your mind, you may want to try using it first." Sometimes making room for more means we have to get rid of some of the self-centered ways and ideas, the clutter. Only then, when our mind is in line with serving others first, demonstrating servant leadership, will there be room for more. Until next time, goodbye.